Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano. It's the 18th of January, 2024. All right, everyone, let's get into it. So I did mention that yesterday or today, I believe, yesterday, that Coinbase was fronting court with the SEC for their first kind of court date in regards to the SEC's lawsuit against them. Now, there was a lot of people live tweeting this. There are a lot of people talking about this on Twitter. I'm sure you saw a bunch of threads, but I think the best summary thread I saw was from Jake Shavinsky here, who basically started the thread off by saying, today's Coinbase hearing revealed a key flaw in the SEC's legal theory. It turns nearly every asset on the planet into a security. This can't be true. The SEC was created to regulate markets for financial instruments, not digital goods or the technologies empowering them. And then, of course, he continues in the thread saying the judge assigned to this case, Judge Failer, seems to get this flaw quite well, where she said, I'm presented with the specter of collectibles being regulated by the SEC. And she's right. The SEC's theory would give it authority over sneakers, trading cards, watches, basically anything with a market price. And this has been something that has been discussed within the context of crypto assets and the SEC and what's a security and what's not a security, is that the SEC is really just gunning for being able to label whatever they want as a security based on their own definitions or based on what they think is a security. And by doing that, they expand it way beyond crypto assets and into things like, as Jake mentioned here, sneakers, trading cards, watches, etc., which obviously is completely unworkable. You know, these are things that people buy and sell all the time. There are marketplaces for them, and they are definitely not securities. They are not securities based on the securities laws from the 1930s, and they wouldn't be based on any updated laws because it just would not make any sense for those laws to exist, basically. But yeah, it seems like the Coinbase is coming off really well in this case right now. Seems like the judge really does understand the intricacies with this case. And the intricacies with regards to not just the crypto assets themselves and if they're a security or not, but also staking as a product, because the SEC is also going after Coinbase for their staking product, and they're going after Binance and Kraken for the same thing, for their staking product, basically saying that what they're offering is a security. And I think there's a quote of the judge saying or asking a question of, does the SEC consider earning interest in a bank account to be a security? Because really, like, you could make that argument. If you're making the argument about staking, you could make that argument about interest on dollars in a bank account, right? So yeah, it's looking really positive here. I mean, I remember when this lawsuit first came out, I even said that I thought that Coinbase was in a really good position to basically fight this and also win this. And I think that that's just gotten stronger and stronger over time, especially given the SEC has just racked up losses after losses in court. And the thing is that I really think that Coinbase is going to wipe the floor with them, to be honest. I really don't think the SEC is going to win on anything against Coinbase here, because it doesn't really make any sense. From what I've read from lawyers and others out there, their lawsuit really doesn't make any sense against Coinbase. And of course, this is just going to have to be all hashed out in court. And I do hope the judge obviously looks at this as objectively as possible. I don't want her to basically take Coinbase's side just because I want Coinbase to win. Obviously, in a court, you want everything to be as objective as possible. And I think that from what I've read, Coinbase came well prepared. The Coinbase's lawyers came well prepared with really, really great arguments, and the judge seemed to really resonate with that. And I think there were better arguments than what the SEC came with. But yeah, it's kind of funny to see these kind of battles go on, because I always think about the incentives here, like the people behind these things, how much these lawyers are getting paid, what they're kind of, what's in it for them, what their career prospects are like after this. Because you could argue that people that work for Coinbase may be much more passionate about this because their whole career relies on this kind of case, not just the lawyers, but others, this kind of case going Coinbase's way, right? It's a big part of their career relies on this. And also they're probably really passionate about crypto, so they want to fight for crypto in court. Whereas the people at the SEC, the lawyers at the SEC, they could be the opposite. They could be people who just hate crypto and just have a really distasteful view of crypto and really want to, kill the crypto bros or shut down the crypto bros, so to speak. There may be people there like that, but you kind of have to wonder, what kind of people are on each side of the aisle. And honestly, if I had to bet on people, like whether they be regulators, government people versus kind of like people within crypto, innovators, builders, I would always bet on the innovators and builders every single time, because there is just so much more, I guess, like fulfillment and passion in being a builder than there is in being kind of a regulator, I believe. Unless, like, you're one of those people who get joy out of, I guess, bringing justice to people and your flavor of justice to people that you think should be brought against them. Because, it's funny when you talk to different people out there. Some people really, really, really hate crypto for one reason or another, like just absolutely hate it. And we've seen that actually play out with some of the biggest asset managers. You saw Vanguard the other day, Vanguard, I should say, the other day saying that they're not going to offer Bitcoin ETF products to their customers because they don't think that it is the right thing to do, or they have a subjective view on this. And that's fine. That's totally fine for them to do. They're a private business, right? They're a private company. They're allowed to do that, right? They're allowed to essentially, I guess, pick and choose which products they want to offer. But the funny thing about this is that there's no real reason for them to do this outside of, in my opinion, spite. In my opinion, that their leadership at Vanguard probably just doesn't like crypto at all. And that's why this has become a decision, or that's something that they've gone with here. And it just makes no business sense, really, because the BTC ETFs have generated a lot of volume, and I think they're going to lose a lot of customers by not offering these products. I think eventually they will offer them, but yeah, taking this kind of moral stance is always weird in markets, I think, and when it comes to market-related stuff, because you could make a moral stance for basically anything. You can moralize anything. I mean, I've seen people try to moralize everything within crypto. They say, oh, you shouldn't invest in this because it's immoral. You know, the Bitcoin maxis will say that Ethereum is a scam, and anyone who's buying ETH is a scammer, right? Or anyone who's promoting ETH is a scammer. So there are obviously a lot of subjectivity here, and the same just extends out to the non-crypto world. Because I always thought it was funny when I thought more deeply about this. When you really think about it, the Bitcoin maxis calling Ethereum a scam is the exact same as the normies calling crypto a scam. It's the same thing. It's just like going up, right? It's turtles all the way down. So you're going up and up and up, and then you start at the top, and then you work your way down to the bottom, and then you have some people in the Ethereum community calling other things a scam that aren't a scam, right? Maybe other L1s and stuff like that. And then you have the other L1s calling other ones a scam, or not morally correct, or just shitty, blah blah blah. And it's always funny seeing those kind of things play out, but I honestly think it's a bad business decision, as I said, from Vanguard and others out there to do this, and they'll come around eventually. But yeah, anyway, I'll keep you guys updated on this case with Coinbase and the SEC. As I said, I do expect Coinbase to win this, but it could take a while to get there, because it seems that the SEC also came to fight here. They're not just going to roll over, and they're definitely not going to withdraw their case, but their track record is not great within the crypto sphere. So I hope to see them obviously lose this case, like personally, because I do think that they've got no basis here for a case, and the SEC has just been extremely hostile towards crypto, so they have absolutely zero goodwill with me personally. I know within the crypto ecosystem, it'd be very hard to find anyone that is in favor of what the SEC has been doing. Even people who don't like crypto have even spoken up in defense of crypto, saying that the SEC is actually not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're going way beyond their mandate. They're basically power grabbing, and it's just funny when you have the people who actually don't even like crypto defending crypto because they don't like the SEC more for the way they're actually treating the law and the way they're actually going about things. That's when you know you kind of screwed up. So yeah, anyway, moving on from that one to some Ethereum related news. Now, of course, we had the Goerli Dencun fork yesterday, and I remember I recorded yesterday's episode earlier, so the fork would have happened by the time you watched the episode. And I think I said on there that don't expect there to be high participation. Like if there's low participation on the testnet, then that's totally normal. And that's exactly what happened. There was low participation on the testnet. We needed to wait for people to come back online and to upgrade their validators and nodes in order to advance the chain. But eventually we got there, and the Goerli fork finalized. And you can actually track this at the Dora Goerli Explorer here. I'll link this in the YouTube description below. But there was also another thing that happened, a little bug that happened at the time of the fork, I believe, got to do with the Prism client, which was basically an edge case bug that I don't believe could happen on mainnet. Yeah, I don't think it would happen on mainnet. Or maybe it would have happened on mainnet, sorry, but they didn't get caught in the dev nets because the dev nets, I think, were too new, and this was like a bug that only happened if the network was past a certain age or something like that, or past a certain historical route, as Parathosh details here. But there was a fix patched in very, very quickly. Validators came back online, and the chain started finalizing again. And yeah, everything's been fine since then, I think. I mean, you can go to the Explorer and you can actually see that everything's chugging along just fine. And we do have blobs live on the network right now. The blobs are there, on Goerli, I should say, not on mainnet. The blobs are working fine, and Dencun successfully forked on Goerli here. Now, of course, the inevitable question people have is this going to lead to a delay in the timeline here? Well, two things on that. One thing, there's no mainnet timeline yet. There are only estimations like I've given, mid to late March. I've said that many times now. And two, because it was a relatively minor bug, the Prism bug, I don't foresee this actually having an impact. We'll know today. I think there's an all-core devs call today or tomorrow that will know. But even if there is an impact of this, maybe they decide, oh, we'll push the other testnet forks out a week or something like that. That would be the most I would see. But at the same time, I don't see why they would push them out, because the fix, as I said, was deployed very quickly. It was a a very minor bug in the grand scheme of things, and everything else seemed to work fine. And again, this is what testnets are for. Like, this is exactly what testnets are for. So I would put money on, at least right now, that there won't be any kind of delay in the other testnet forking. They'll fork, Sepolia will fork on 30th of Jan, Holsky on Feb 7th, and you know, I expect those to go well. I don't expect there to be any hiccups there. And then if they do, yeah, there wouldn't be any kind of, I guess, quote unquote delay to get mainnet going there. But we'll have to see. I guess we'll see by either tomorrow or Monday, depending when the all-core dev call is. I think the all-core dev call is actually today, so we'll probably see by tomorrow's episode, because tomorrow is Friday, obviously the last episode of the week, what they decide there. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they would need an extra, like, why would they would push anything out, considering that the fix is already in and there's no other bugs that have kind of creeped up or anything. And the low participation stuff, as I explained yesterday, is literally testnet specific. It's got nothing to do with the kind of upgrade. It's just the fact that people are slow to upgrade their testnet nodes and come online because there's no money at stake. You know, I explained all this yesterday, so I'm not going to go through it again, but that's kind of why it happens like that. So on mainnet, we don't have that issue. So yeah, but anyway, I will keep you guys updated on this, and I'm sure you probably see a tweet on this before I do tomorrow's episode if they do decide to delay anything here, but I don't think so. It doesn't really make much sense to me that they would do something like that. All right, so I covered the roadmap items, or I guess like the EIPs that are slated for possible inclusion. So they're just proposed right now, possible inclusion in the Prague/Electra upgrade, which is the next upgrade after Dencun. And I came across a really interesting tweet today from Jimmy Ragosa, who basically has a nice little animation here where he places the EIPs as part of the Prague/Electra upgrade in Vitalik's roadmap here. So he basically places them where they belong in the roadmap. I don't know if you can see this if I go full screen here. I think you can. Let me just quickly go full screen here. Yeah, you can see it. You can see it here, but it's a bit cut off. But you can see that on the left-hand side. This is what I shared yesterday, which is a list of all the EIPs that are proposed for Prague/Electra, and Jimmy has basically dragged them in to the roadmap on the right-hand side here and to where they fit in on the roadmap. So you can see he drags in the Verkle trees section into the Verge, then the new opcodes, they go into the Splurge and the Purge, and you can actually see them like on the video. I'll link this in the YouTube description. You can watch it for yourself. But you can actually see, and what I wanted to point out here beyond this, was that these things are part of multiple categories. There's, as I've said before, like this roadmap that Vitalik put out is not sequential. It doesn't happen one after the other. It happens in parallel. And that's exactly what you're seeing here. We could have EIPs that belong in the Verge category and in the Splurge category of the roadmap going into the same upgrade, right? So there's no need to wait until like we do all the Surge, we do all the Scourge, and then, you know, go through the steps like that. That's not how it works. And actually, a lot of these EIPs are part of the Splurge, if you're watching the video here, which is pretty fun to see, because the Splurge is considered the nice to have, I guess, and the things that may not necessarily have to be on the back burner, but just things that aren't necessarily like the biggest priority. And as I've said before, these EIPs are only proposed right now. They're not, they're not considered for inclusion or slated for inclusion in the upgrade yet. They're just proposed as possible EIPs for the upgrade. But still cool to see that there is actually the Splurge EIPs being worked on right now. But anyway, you can go check out this video for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so speaking of updates on Ethereum's roadmap, Josh Rudolph here, who works on Verkle trees, or I guess like the Verkle upgrade of Ethereum, has shared the latest updates on stateless Ethereum from the Verkle Implementers Call number 10. Now, this, of course, is a pretty big tweet. You can go give this a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But I think that the TLDR is basically that they had client team updates, testing and tooling, launch of the newest testnet, and block hash opcodes. And he also posted at the top of the tweet here why we're actually doing Verkle trees and statelessness. And he says Verkle and statelessness not only improve decentralization by making it significantly easier to run a node, but just as importantly, also pave the way for future performance and scalability gains, such as stateless nodes equals eliminating disk I/O, reduces barriers to a higher gas limit, and so on. And that's what I've talked about before, about the fact that once we have these implemented, we can actually raise the gas limit a lot higher without suffering from those negative externalities that I mentioned, I think, a few days ago on the refuel here. And then he linked to Peter from Geth's slides that he did on this topic that I remember highlighting on the refuel a little while ago. But you can check these out. These slides are quite old now. I think they're from 2022, but it's still the same thing. It's still very relevant to today. And then of course you can check out the rest of the tweet here for updates from the call. And I'll just link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so. But yeah, it definitely seems like a lot of work is being done on the Verge / Verkle / statelessness right now. But in saying that, I still don't think it would go live this year. I still think it will get punted to next year because it is such a large upgrade and it's such a large undertaking. And I believe that there are more, I guess, like, I wouldn't say urgent, but more like important upgrades that need to go live this year, especially raising the effective balance, the max effective balance. I think that's pretty important because, as I said, that takes load off the network and allows us to potentially increase the size of blobs, which benefit L2s, which is where all the users are. So if we're talking about priorities here, Verkle's great. Don't get me wrong. It's awesome and it's much needed, but you have to prioritize. Like, as I said, like those EIPs in that list of the ones that are proposed for Prague / Electra, they're like, not all of them are going to go in. And the core devs, the community has to prioritize what we actually want to see go in that upgrade and what will get like kind of punted to next year. So we'll have to see how that shakes out there. But yeah, you can go read this tweet. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so we have something new from Flashbots today. So there's a dashboard that they've released illuminating Ethereum's order flow market with an accompanying blog post. So what this dashboard shows, if you go to the actual dashboard itself, is basically how the entire private order flow market, or I guess like retail order flow market, works on Ethereum, from the different relays, the different builders, the different kind of dexes people use, and so on and so forth. And you can see how these all interact here through public and private mempool. So yeah, it's not just the private mempool, it's also the public mempool. And it's pretty cool to see this all visualized. It's actually, like, when I look at this, I'm like, wow, this is a generally pretty healthy market, I think, because you can see how many different players there are. Yes, there are some dominant players on here, like the aggregators and things like that, and obviously there are dominant builders, but you can really see just how diverse the on-chain ecosystem is when it comes to where liquidity sits, where people choose to do trades, what contracts they use, so on and so forth. But you can see, as I said, like most of the building happens in the three of the top builders: Beaver Build, Titan, and Rsync Builder. They build a lot of the blocks, and as I've mentioned before, that's generally okay from a, I guess, building blocks perspective. It's generally not okay from a censorship perspective right now, because 4 out of 5, I think, of the top builders are still censoring OFAC transactions, or Tornado Cash transactions, because it's on the OFAC list here. But posts like these, or dashboards like these, illuminate that for us and allow us to work on it with things like inclusion lists and so on and so forth. So yeah, you can go check out this dashboard for yourself along with the accompanying blog post. I'll link them both in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, so Octant has updated us on the Epoch 2 allocation window. So this is now open until January 30th, 2024. It's your chance to decide where your rewards will go. Keep them, donate some or all to public goods, or contribute to the matching fund. And just to remind you here, Octant is an initiative where they're basically taking staking rewards and distribute, well, not all the staking rewards, but some of the staking rewards, and distributing them out based on community input to things like public goods. And this was put in place a little while ago. I think it's already been a year, maybe. I'm not sure exactly how long it's been. But in this thread, you can see all the details around the second round that they're doing here, how to get involved. And I mean, there's a blog post here for more in-depth information about all of this. But yeah, cool to see this experiment continue. I think that during the first Epoch, they gave away like a few hundred ETH of rewards or something like that. So it's not small kind of amounts of money here, guys. It's some pretty serious money here. And as you guys know, I'm always in favor of anything trying to fund any kind of public goods out there, whether that be, Gitcoin, Optimism's retroactive public goods funding, Octant, a bunch of other, things out there. There's actually a fair few of these public goods funding initiatives now, which is great to see, because obviously we don't want to just have one, because then it becomes very centralized, and we don't want to just have one type either, because, for example, within Optimism, what you have is they're funding it via OP tokens, basically. And those OP tokens were printed out of thin air, and the only reason they have any value is because people are buying them on the market, right? And kind of like bidding up the price for whatever reason. And then you have the Gitcoin way of doing it, where people are, putting up matching funds, but then there's also people donating, and then you have the quadratic matching going on. And then you have, like, Octant is doing it, where they're staking ETH and then taking a portion of those rewards and allocating them. And then you have like the protocol guild, which is going to all the DAOs around and basically asking them, hey, you should contribute some of your treasury to the protocol guild because the core devs keep this network alive for you guys to, you know, profit from and benefit from, and so on and so forth. So there are different ways to fund public goods, and I'm glad to see a lot of them being tried and tested, and we're going to see which ones, you know, which ones are better than others. And I'm actually going to talk about one of the failed experiments recently, in a sec. But yeah, just great to see this. So you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, and just a shout out here, Superphiz reminded us today that there is a list of dashboards that he curates that can be useful for interpreting the Ethereum ecosystem, and you can find it on GitHub. I'll link this in the YouTube description below, but this is great. There are so many dashboards here, guys. You can get lost in these dashboards for hours on end, tracking everything got to do with the Ethereum ecosystem, whether that's beacon chain health, beacon chain metrics, stuff like that, you know, staking metrics generally, monetary policy dashboards, DeFi dashboards, MEV stuff. There's so much going on here, guys, and I highly recommend checking this out. So thanks again to Superphiz for maintaining this and shouting it out again and reminding us all to go check it out. But as I said, I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. All right, so I just mentioned before about how one of those experiments with public goods has unfortunately, I struggle to use the term failed because like failed is such a harsh term. I'm going to say not worked out because not every experiment is going to work out. Most actually don't work out. Most experiments end up just like fading away or end up not doing what their creators thought they were going to do. And one of those things is the public goods network, which was the layer 2, that OP stack chain that was launched by Gitcoin. So they said here today on Twitter, today we are sharing a bittersweet update on the public goods network's future. Since launching the public goods network in July 2023, our journey has been one of building and learning, fueled by the incredible support of the Public Goods Alliance, our community partners, and of course Gitcoin. So after a thorough assessment, the Public Goods Network stewards have decided to wind down PGN over the next 6 months, tentatively closing in June 2024. And they say here the decision, of course, was not easy, but a realistic evaluation highlighted challenges in our ability to meet our goals of generating significant funding for public goods. And you remember one of those goals was to basically use the sequencer fees from the Public Goods Network in order to fund public goods. Now, I think that they talk about why, I guess, like, and they're also trying to do contract secured revenue as well, which was basically something that I wanted to see experimented on layer 2s, but unfortunately it's not going to be done with PGN here. But they explain in more detail in this thread about kind of their thinking and also the governance forum post as well. But when I think about why this kind of failed or why this didn't work out, the thing that comes to mind for me is really the UX of it all. Because I remember during the Gitcoin grants matching rounds, you had like, I think 3 options. You could donate on Ethereum mainnet, the Optimism mainnet, and PGN. And I think anytime people wanted to go and donate via PGN, you'd obviously have to bridge into PGN to do this. And that was just like a UX barrier for people. And PGN was not supported by any centralized exchanges. You had to bridge in from basically Ethereum mainnet. So essentially what happened is that you'd be paying Ethereum mainnet fees anyway to bridge into PGN, and then you would be able to donate. And then a lot of people already had money on OP mainnet, so they would just use OP mainnet instead of using the PGN, right? Or they just used Ethereum mainnet. So there was like a UX fragmentation issue there, which, as I've said before, will get solved eventually. This will all be abstracted away eventually. But this is bleeding edge stuff here, guys. This is not something that is something that normies are going to be using. This is definitely very crypto native stuff. And even then, it's just like a very high barrier to entry there. And then, of course, because, as I've said before, a lot of these long tail of L2s, especially these ones that are more niche and focus on something in specific, probably aren't going to work out because I just won't be able to get the mind share, the market share from the bigger ones out there, because liquidity is a network, is a power law distribution at the end of the day. It always follows a power law distribution. We've already seen that play out with L1s, we've seen it play out with L2s, we've seen it play out with pretty much everything within crypto and a lot of things within just traditional finance as well. But I remember when I talked about the PGN back when it first got announced, I was pretty excited for it because I wanted to see the experiment play out. I can't remember exactly what I said. I don't know if I said if it would succeed or fail. I mean, obviously I didn't know, and obviously it didn't end up succeeding, but I thought at the time I was pretty excited because I was like, yeah, another layer 2, someone's experimenting with this. They're doing, public goods funding via the sequencer fees and sequencer revenue. But I do remember possibly mentioning at the time that I thought that getting enough sequencer revenue to do this would be quite hard because you'd need a lot of transactions, obviously, because the transactions are so cheap. You'd have to basically have a lot of transactions happening to make this money, and you would have to have like hundreds of thousands of dollars a day of fee revenue, because then obviously you'd be paying a lot of that to Ethereum L1 as to settle on it, and then you take whatever's left for public goods funding, and it just didn't work out. There just wasn't enough there, and I'm really glad to see that they wound this down sooner rather than later. There are a lot of projects out there that exist as zombies, and I hate it because zombie projects are the worst because they just feel like a slow rug. So I'm glad that that Gitcoin decided to wind down the PGN and earlier, sooner rather than later, which is speaks to Gitcoin's commitment to trying things, and then if it doesn't work out, not just like doubling down on it and becoming a zombie kind of project, but just winding it down and trying something new, trying something else, and focusing their energy elsewhere. That to me is a sign of a very mature ecosystem and a very mature team, so kudos to them for doing that. But anyway, you can go read the full thread and post related posts here. I'll link them in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, an interesting tweet here from Nick, who is the CEO at Fuel, which is an L2 on Ethereum. He put out a tweet where he said, 4844 may be one of the most important features for Ethereum. It enables Ethereum to produce incredible throughput while remaining the ultimate settlement layer. Node requirements remain low and decentralization remains high. This is the true cypherpunk way. And what I love about this tweet is one, I mean, I've been preaching this for years now. You guys know this is what I'm all about, right? But two, it really is the true cypherpunk way, right? Because this entire ecosystem, starting with Bitcoin, was founded on the fact that we want something decentralized, right? And if you don't have decentralization, then you're much better off just being completely centralized. I actually don't really believe in the decentralization is a spectrum thing when it comes to crypto, especially when it comes to L1s. I do believe that there is a kind of path to decentralization for certain projects where essentially you can start off very centralized and then become decentralized over time. I think even Bitcoin started off like that, right? But if you're not decentralized and you're not credibly decentralized, there is absolutely no point to having a blockchain. Like, there is literally 0 point, because you can achieve everything you want to achieve in a more efficient, cheaper, faster, better way, being completely centralized. Just throw decentralization out. Decentralization has a really, really high cost to it. The cost is the fact that scale is extremely limited, as we've seen with Bitcoin, as we've seen with Ethereum, as we've seen with even some of these quote-unquote high throughput L1s, right? They're nowhere near enough throughput at this stage to service the world, and they're nowhere near enough throughput to even challenge centralized solutions, right? And a lot of them take a lot of shortcuts and pump up the node requirements and stuff like that, which inevitably makes them more centralized. So at the end of the day, I've had this strong belief for a very, very long time. Like, if you're not decentralized, there's no point. There really is no point. And that's why Ethereum has gone, well, one of the reasons why Ethereum has gone with the roll-up centric roadmap, because the Ethereum ecosystem strongly believes that if Ethereum L1 sacrifices those properties of being able to run your own full node, being able to run the network on low-powered hardware, being open to everyone to verify the chain, then there is no point. There is no point at all. It doesn't matter if we scaled. All we scaled was a centralized thing, and inevitably, eventually, it will get completely censored. It will probably get completely shut down if it's centralized. And the whole point is that it can't be, right? And that's why we're scaling via the different kind of L2s out there. I mean, that's one of the reasons why with the roll-up centric roadmap. So I just wanted to comment on Nick's tweet here. Of course, there was someone who replied and said, I wouldn't exactly classify 0.375 megabytes as incredible throughput, which is obviously referencing the initial blob throughput here. But then Nick had a great reply to him. He said, it is when you're talking about a real blockchain and not a federated server network. One of Ethereum's biggest technical differentiators is accessible node requirements. It's genuinely the ultimate cypherpunk chain, which is a big reason why it will continue to be so valuable. I couldn't have said it better myself, right? If Ethereum hasn't taken any shortcuts to scale, hasn't taken any kind of I guess like anything that will centralize the L1 to scale. Ethereum has pushed scaling to L2s. Yes, a lot of them are relatively centralized right now. Some of them are really centralized right now. But as I said, you can become decentralized over time, and it's on them to prove. It's on these networks to prove that they're decentralized over time. And we'll probably get a stage 2 roll up this year. Arbitrum 1 is stage 1 already. If they get to stage 2 this year, they are credibly decentralized at that stage. And then we've got the biggest L2 that's decentralized, and we've scaled really at the end of the day. So when I think about it like that, yeah, that's kind of my whole view of why we're building what we're building here. And that's why I'm so disinterested in all these monolithic chains, because I really do fundamentally believe that there is 0 point to a blockchain if it is not decentralized. 0 point. And I as I said, like, I strongly believe that, to the point where for someone to convince me that there is any point to anything that anything isn't decentralized to be a blockchain, I kind of welcome you to try and convince me of that, because that is I would say maybe my strongest held belief in crypto, honestly. I mean, obviously that falls into how bullish I am on Ethereum generally, but yeah, that's my strongest held belief in crypto. I mean, the whole point of this entire ecosystem is decentralization there. But as I said, if you agree with me, try to convince me in maybe the Daily Gwei Discord channel or something like that, you know, not decentralized blockchains deserve to exist. I just do not think that is the case. All right, so just a quick FYI here, as of recording and probably the foreseeable future, the Rocketpool Twitter account is still compromised. So it's been, I think, like, it had at least 12 hours, probably a bit longer than that this account has been compromised. It is sharing phishing links. Do not click these links at all, guys. They will drain your tokens and your money. You will lose money by clicking here. But the reason I bring this up is just another general security reminder for everyone about pretty much like everything. Make sure that you've locked down a lot of things that you kind of like manage, whether they be, you know, Web 2 accounts such as Twitter. You know, remove your mobile number off of that. Use proper 2FA on there, like an authenticator app. But also just like your crypto holdings generally, you should lock down. You should obviously have great custody setups. If you are self-custodying, you should really just take your security very seriously. So I just wanted to give a reminder out there about that. But also on the Twitter account compromise thing, the reason why Rocketpool's Twitter account is still compromised is because Twitter's customer support absolutely sucks. Like since Elon took over, it has just gotten worse and worse and worse. And it's because I believe Elon gutted the customer support department. So now to get your Twitter account back takes days, right? Because it has to go through like probably what is a skeleton crew of customer support, unless you're like a really big account. Obviously the SEC got their account back very quickly, but that's one, because they're a government entity, and two, it's a really big account. And same for people like Verkle, got it back really, really quickly. But for anything relatively small, like the Rocketpool project is obviously big within crypto, but you know, they're not a huge account. They've got like 50,000 followers on Twitter, right? So when you look at it from that perspective, and you look at it from the perspective of what the kind of priority is here, yeah, Twitter does just have a priority for this. So they just absolutely suck. I hate it. But make sure you lock your Twitter account down. Make sure that you don't have a mobile number attached to it at all, because SIM swapping is very common. And make sure you have a proper authenticator attached to your account to protect yourself from this. Because honestly, guys, if you have like just an account and you're only using it to follow other people, you don't really have many followers, the chances of you getting your account back are really, really slim. I know that Jasper, a Rocketpool community member, you probably see him on Twitter all the time, lost his original account, and I think had to start again, and it has a new account. I don't think he's gotten access back to his original account yet, or maybe he has, but I mean, it was a very long time. It's been a very long time. So yeah, just lock your account down so you don't have to face that there. But anyway, on that note, that's going to be it for today's episode. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.